Unit number 3, human resource management, planning for and recruiting HR. So in this unit, we're going to be talking about that specific time when you want to work for a certain company. So you see an application and then you decide to apply for it. So what happens behind scenes is the company needs you or someone else for different reasons. It can be they need someone with a certain skill, maybe because their operation is changing and they need maybe someone that has creative or a certain skill that they need. It can be in terms of a shortage. Maybe at some point they have some kind of shortage of employees, or they forecast that in the future they may need someone else, or perhaps someone's quitting. So there's many different reasons for companies to go through these stages. So in this case, we have, for example, here a video. Is an interesting video, the career as a recruiter. You can choose to be a recruiter, but also you can work for companies that they just focus on recruiting. So for them, what they do is they just interview employees. They have a database of employees, a pool of employees, and they have a pool of customers, which are the companies that pay them, and then they try to match them according to the best skills and so on. So for them, it's very critical to match the right people to the right company, because in the end, it's their business, right? Sometimes what happens with some companies is that they go through the process and they don't hire the best one because either they don't have the expertise or the recruiter is not good enough in the company. So sometimes, or really they didn't measure well what they needed. So these companies, they try to be very, very careful in what the companies are looking for. And they ask a lot of questions. They look at their operations, their workflow. They do a job analysis. And based on that, they try to understand what kind of employee will match them well. So in this case, we have, in the process of HR planning, we have 3 stages: forecasting, goal setting, strategic planning, and program implementation and evaluation. So in this case, we have the forecasting and the goal setting, meaning in this case, we have how many employees we need, what kind of production I need, or what kind of goals in terms of sales or productivity, etc. Strategic plan, how many people I need, and also think strategically whether I really need to hire more people I need to do a restructuration of the company where perhaps rather than having 5 employees doing a very minimal job, then I'd rather have 3 that perhaps they have more knowledge and it's going to cost me less than 5. And then, of course, the implementation of those employees in their specific functions, and then evaluate whether the decisions that we took for hiring or restructuration have the right outcomes that we're planning for, right? So in this case, we have to think of the forecast of labor demand and the forecast of labor supply. This goes together a little bit with operations management, because we have to understand if we're going to set the operation of a certain business in a certain place, that has to do whether we have employees in that region or in that area to fulfill that demand that we have, right? So it could be that, for example, when we talk about Silicon Valley, this is a very great example. So we have a cluster of companies, of technology companies. So we have a forecast of labor demand of very specialized type of employees. So in this case, the labor supply is there because many of the people that specializes on this, they live in the Bay Area in San Francisco. So in this case, we have the labor demand and the supply is there. But sometimes it happens, like recently happened with Trump, that he take an executive order to ban some of the visas for highly specialized foreigners, the H-1B, and then you have an undersupply of that talent, and that creates a problem, right? So what happens to that talent? Maybe they have to go to some other countries and some other places, and you don't have that qualified labor that you need in that country. So in this case, again, we have to forecast that, and then we have to see whether there's going to be a surplus or a shortage. The same on the other reason, what happens when we have a shortage? The problem is when we have talent, we have to retain it because we know there's not enough professionals. But on the other hand, when we have a surplus, we can pay them less. Why? Because if you don't do the job, there's someone out there that also can do the job, same as 1 million more. So the more specialized the job, the more likely there will be a shortage of employees. So in this case, we have to think about that. We already thought about these 3 steps. Okay, so in this case, we have to think of a couple things, which is the forecasting. We have to forecast the demand, determine the labor supply, and determine whether we are going to need someone or not, or that perhaps if we forecast that some certain seasons, for example, we produce more items, we need to forecast that based on the demand and supply of the certain product that we manufacture or produce, or service. It could be, for example, if it's a service and we're talking about the hotels, the vacations. Well, not now because we're gonna travel, but in normal situation you can travel. So they have to forecast for the holiday season how they're gonna hire. The last time I was talking to one of the managers in one of the hotels of Cancun, and he was saying that there's some rainy months that they just lay off everyone. Some people that are very regular, they still get paid, but some others is just temporary work. So they need to determine that based on the numbers of accommodations that they will have in a certain time, right? So in this case, we also have that's a trend analysis when we look at how the market has behaved in the previous years. So, for example, right now is a very extraordinary time because we cannot forecast in 2021. We cannot forecast based on what happened in 2020. So we may look at older times, or we don't have any point of reference. And also we have the leading indicators, that is like, again, objective measures that accurately predict future labor demand. So we have certain numbers that already guide us in terms of the production, in terms of the sales, in terms of the customers that we have. So in this case, we can forecast in a much better way. All right. So determining the labor supply, we have chart that lists jobs categories held in one period, proportion of employees in each of those categories in a future period, and see how they behave and they how correlate, and whether there's any changes or so. So in this case, for example, we can see where did people in each category go, where did people now in each job category come from. So in this case, we can see where they started, where they move, etc., and we can see where majority of our workforce is. We need to understand what are the critical parts of a production system, right? Because in the end, there's some areas that if we don't have someone that can cover up from another department, but some others where the labor is more difficult. Like I was saying, for example, for a laborer that just do some manufacturing, there's no big problem because we can hire just another one. But we're talking about the guy that redesigns and maintains the line and knows absolutely all the operation and how it goes, an operations manager, that is not easy to find. So in this case, we have to be aware of who we keep, who we fire, under what parameters. Okay, so determining this labor or surplus shortages, as I explained before, it let us address the challenges in the future. When we know what we need in advance, we can hire in advance. What happens when we don't forecast in advance? What happens is that sometimes we are rushing to hire someone. We may not have enough candidates, or perhaps the right candidates, they do want to apply, but they cannot just quit their current job and just come and work with us. So there are many challenges to that. So that's why it's better to forecast and say, well, in 3 months, maybe I will need someone. In 6 months, someone's going to retire. Some companies even take the time to say into next year, 1 year I need already. And they open the job and they just wait for 1 year. Employees say also have a contract, so I can come in 1 year, and that's a win-win situation. So we need to address that, right? So we talked about also the goal setting, strategic planning, what I want to address. Here, companies have many areas to look into. It could be financial goals. Maybe I want to save money in terms of restructuring the company, or perhaps laying off employees. That is, in this case, I forecast that perhaps economics are not very good, so I need to restructure everything. Or on the other side, I see that my operations are increasing, so I need more people. It can be financial, it can be in terms of quality. Maybe I need to restructure the company in terms of we change the company goal. Rather than selling cheap products or cheaper products, we have a completely different approach in terms of the design of the product. We need different people to work with and so on. This is the case, for example, of the company Guess. I don't know if, well, you know, jeans, Guess jeans. Initially, they were just another brand of jeans and no big deal, but then they rebranded themselves as a more luxurious brand. So that meant that they had to change the designers, they had to change the strategy, and they had to go into markets that perhaps they didn't know. Again, they were just like Levi's, but suddenly you were having a Guess jeans of $200, and of course they started to go into different markets. If we're going into different markets, you have a different strategy, and that means different human resources that can tackle those challenges that you are going to experience in that different industry. So for that matter, we have to understand what are the core competencies that create value for the customer. So in this case, for example, initially they were just a brand that created value for being recognized as one of the first companies that created jeans, but they realized that they were fighting against too many jeans competitors, and then they decided to change completely their core competency from being just a company of jeans to be a more of a designing company of jeans. So again, in this case, they had to change all their employee forecast and their employee profile in order to match those new needs that they have. So now we have also a downsizing. Downsizing, that's another forecast that we see. That means we are going to cut people. So when do we cut people? Very simple. Sometimes, like I said, it's reducing costs. Sometimes also we are using technology. That happens a lot of, for example, happen specifically in industries that some tools or some actions are very repetitive. If I just need to point A to point B, point A, point B, point A, point B, that the machine can do it, then we have it. Of course, over time we will recover the investment because the machine doesn't get tired, doesn't make mistakes, etc. We have mergers and acquisition or restructuration. So this happens when two companies. So I have now two operation managers and I just need one. So in this case, we can think whether we're going to relocate those people to other departments or what are we going to do with them. Or simply we move to more economic allocation. This happens to many manufacturing companies. And when we're thinking of moving to other locations, what's important in here is that the location that we choose has the right workforce. So why? Because workforce is very critical. You want to change your operations to Vietnam, or you want to change your operations to Indonesia, for saying something, and you get to understand that it's cheaper, but they are uneducated, or the levels of education are much lower than, for example, maybe in Korea. So here you have a challenge because you have to train them, you have to adapt to the way they work, and that means many challenges because you're going to face a lot of mistakes in the beginning. And so while you may think it's cheaper, in the initial phase, it may not be cheaper because you have to spend much more on training those unqualified laborers. So here we have again, so we have this table, this matrix, and here we can see options for reducing a surplus. So here we have, like, for example, the options. For example, we have downsizing, or we have pay reductions, or demotions, transfers, work sharing, hiring freeze, natural attrition. People, they do it. So in this case, we have different areas, right? So in this case, for example, we can have, well, I think we understand all of them. I'm just going to mention, like, for example, hiring freeze. When we see that the industry is not moving very well, we don't hire at the time, and we spend 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 years without hiring really anyone. Natural attrition, we understand that, for example, we have a very old workforce, so we forecast that that's going to happen. Here I give you an example of the universities in New Zealand. They understand that many of their professors in the next 10 years are going to be quitting because they're going to be becoming 70, 75 years old. So again, universities in this case, as an employer, they are looking to forecast that and take any action based on that. Okay, very good. So here more we have labor shortages. Also, for example, avoiding a shortage. In the other side, we pay overtime. We have temporary employees. That happens, for example, in the hospitality industry, outsourcing. Maybe we already hire another company to do it for us. We train transfers. We have transfers from another of our branches, or turnover reductions. In this case, we don't fire and hire as quickly as we can, so we try to maintain people as much as we can. And then we have people working from externally, or technological innovation, which is, like I said, replacement. Okay, so there's many areas to avoid, many options for avoiding a shortage. In general, like I said, we need to get the right forecast so that we can take the right decision. So in this case, the evaluating the HR plan is implementing it, checking how it's working. So in this case, let's say, for example, we decided to lay off so many employees because of the coronavirus. So what are the implications on the long term? In the short term, I cannot maintain them. Why? Because I'm not generating enough profit. So I'm going to lay them off. But probably in 1 year or two, I need to hire them again. So what is the action of let's evaluate this action. So over 1 year, I can say, well, temporarily you're not in action, and I offer you immediate recontract maybe in 1 year or two, because I know you're trained. And probably if the things are going much better at that time, I offer you to come back with a certain incentive, so that in the meantime you can look for another job, but I promise you that we will be better, and I offer you something. So again, in this case, these implementations of like just cutting personnel, it has its implications on the long term. So in this case, for example, we have recruiting of human resources. We can see the role of recruiting is to build, again, new hires, and then understand where are our shortages and what we can do out of that. Okay, so in here we have many factors influence the aspects of recruiting. So in this case, we need to look at the employees, what they want, what they expect, what a company we can offer, and how we match all those expectations with the offers that we have. So in the end, also, how is the industry? Maybe there are other employees that are better than us. They pay more than us. We need to understand, again, all these scenarios at large, so that we can take better decisions. So here we have, when we have personal policies, we can think of, companies always have to think of what is the best strategy for them. So for example, we have internal versus external recruiting. If I'm going to open a position for a manager, do I pull employees from my own company? They have the expertise, but maybe they don't have that innovativeness of someone, or a fresh new vision. They've been so many years inside that perhaps it's not good. So we have to think, what's better? Someone that knows, but just knows the same system, or someone from outside that perhaps is going to bring fresh blood to us, right? We have, for example, lead the market pay strategies. I pay more than others. So that happens, for example, here in Korea. Many students want to work for Samsung. No, they pay so well. Yeah, they pay so well, but you also have to work a lot. So I mean, in this case, they are lead the market pay strategies. They pay more, but they squeeze you more, right? We have employment at will policies, which is whenever we feel like the opportunity grows, we hire someone, and if not. And then we have image advertising, which is, in this case, some companies have so much good reputation of the product or other employees that people want to work for them. They are pulled already. Okay, they don't need to. I tell you want to work for Google, you just work for Google, because you already have that image that they are a very good employer, right? So here we have some, like I said, some of the advantages of using internal sources. You already have people that know the company, they know the colleagues, they know the systems. But again, one of the biggest problems is that perhaps they don't think in another way, and that's something that sometimes people from outside can bring. But again, they don't know the systems or the people, and so it can be a total failure. This is a case, for example, of Disney. They just changed the CEO not long ago from Bob Eager that he already knew the company from top to bottom, and when bringing other people, they brought from inside, but not the way they wanted it worked in the way they wanted. They thought that succession internally will work, but it didn't work that well. So in here we have, for example, a recruitment sources. Here is important to understand where are we going to post the jobs. It's been said there's a myth running around that says that most of the jobs people get them from referrals, and it's true, because in the end people say work for my company, go for an interview, so they already have some good references. Why should I try to go for employees that I don't know, or that through interview they're going to say things that perhaps are not true, as compared to one employee that tells me this guy is already very reliable? So there's many ways, there's many sources. There's company website, there's another referrals of company websites, job aggregator like those like HRM or stuff, a recruiter initiated contacts. We have the recruiter, the headhunters, we have job boards, maybe from the government, so etc. etc. We have so many types of where we're gonna post, and again where we hire the most. Again, this has changed a lot. We can see, for example, here walk-ins, now it's obsolete, but in the past many people used to do it. So in this case, well, we have that, but this is the same one. Okay. And then we have to evaluate the quality of a source. So let's say in this case, for example, we have referrals. So referrals can be a very good quality referral, because in the end we know already what to expect as compared to some other things. No, career fairs is so quick that in the end it doesn't bring too much value to us. So we have to understand, in this case, the quality of the source, how much we spend on that, whether, for example, we went to career fair, how much we spent for the booth, how many employees we got, how much we paid. So we make a ratio of return on investment. It's as simple as that. No, I mean, whether this employee was worth it or not. Maybe we did this career day and it didn't work well at all, because in the end all the employees that we hired, they quit at the first time, no, the first month. So in this case, again, we have the recruiters. When we have the recruiters for the company, we have to understand that they are the front line. They are the image of the company. Many potential employees complain about the recruiters because they do not portray the image of the company, right? They say, for example, I want to work for this company that is very professional. Let's say Deloitte Consulting. So they claim to be very professional, but they supposedly scheduled me an interview and they were missing, or they didn't call me. The recruiter never replies my email. So you're like, what kind of company is this? But it's just because the recruiter itself is not good. So we also have to think on that the recruiter is the image of the company, and sometimes they go straightly to represent them, and some other times they not. So we have to be very careful. Personally, I think that the way the recruiter works is probably internally how the company works. If they are very organized, they have already a whole schedule for interviewing, recruiting, etc., hiring, contract, means probably internally they are very organized as well. But that's my personal opinion. So anyways, that's it for today. If you have any questions, you can post them on your eCampus, or you can ask me directly. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.